Good evening. Tonight we are gathered to a special session, Challenge the Rabbi. There to ask any question from Torah to Taboo. I have 4 minutes to answer. I don't know any of the questions in advance. Only one person sent me a question, but I was driving, so I was scared to not look on the road. So I didn't look at the question yet, but we're going to start. Can we all have one finger? 2 fingers? Ready? Here we go. The first question. Thank you. First question. Hopefully I can't read your handwriting and you have to step up and we'll know who the anonymous person. I am a twin. I feel really connected to my brother who has several palsy. At birth, somehow, things took a major turn. I wasn't supposed to be here. And my twin was supposed to turn out okay. I blamed myself at a young age, feel guilty. Why is that? First of all, there are things, a part of understanding God and believing God is to understand that we don't understand God's ways. And many times, when it comes to anything, the nature of man is right away to look at himself and ask himself, how am I responsible for what's happening in the world, what's happening in my immediate life? Many times, at a very young age, I remember one day my daughter, she was 4 years old. As a kid, very bubbly, very happy, always speaking to herself, imagining scenarios with the dolls and everything. And one day, from one day to the next, she stopped. It seemed that there was a little argument in the family. I won't go into details. And it affected her. My wife and I were looking at each other and saying, what's wrong with our daughter? She's not herself. She was down. And then something came to my head. And I said to her, you know, what happened between us and these people is not your fault. And we made up. We made peace together. And at that moment, I remember, I will never forget, my 4-year-old daughter did something like this. Then she just came back to herself. So you imagine that the nature of man is that whatever happens, God forbid there's a divorce, there's a fight between husband and wife, father and mother, there's something wrong that happens with a sibling, the first thing is, I am responsible. So that feeling of responsibility is beautiful, it's touching, it's a show of tremendous sensitivity, but really it doesn't lead a person to anything. The real show of sensitivity is not when you just have a feeling that paralyzes you, but rather when that feeling, instead of paralyzing you, pushes you forward and pushes you out of your comfort zone. And that's the type of feeling we need to have. Many times we hear what's happening in Israel. Shem Yirachem, every day, another thing and another thing. Thank God, Hashem gave us that we're here. So a person feels bad. You meet a person that has some type of handicap and you can't look at them in the eyes because you feel guilty that Baruch Hashem, things are well for you. The Jewish way, even though Jewish guilt is very famous, The real Jewish way is to take situations and ask ourselves, what is it asking from me? Now that I realize the gift that I have, what do I need to do different? How can I step up to the plate? How can I not complain, be more happy, and bring joy to those who are around me? How can I realize that this is really an opportunity? Feelings are very, very tricky. Feelings are tricky because the Baal HaTanya explains that you have to be very careful of a thought to do teshuvah, to return and to repent on your sins in the midday. Sometimes you have this awakening and you think, wow, that's such a spiritual awakening. I feel so far away from God. I feel bad, and you feel sad, and you feel so on and so forth. You have to know it's a trick. It's the Yetzer Hara sometimes disguising itself and wanting to bring you down to a state of sadness in order that you will not accomplish anything. There's a difference between sadness and frustration. Sadness is a prohibition. You're not allowed to be sad. You could be frustrated, you could be bitter. What is the result of sadness? Going to bed, going into your phone, going into some type of addiction, some type of escape. Frustration gets you to say, you know what, never again. I'm going to change. I'm going to get out of my bed. I'm going to get out of my phone. I'm going to do something about it. So be very careful with these types of feelings that play with your emotions and bring you guilt. At the end of the day, you will only lose out. You will not really be a winner over this. Next question. Can you have multiple wives? If yes, why is there no shatchanim for these people? If both parties agree. Oh boy, both parties agree. I wonder what type of couple would agree to have multiple wives if both parties agree. Both parties. Okay, I'm sorry, we're going to have to read the commentary. I forgot to read the commentary in the back over there. It says, it's basically we're talking about one man and the two wives agree. So first of all, according to halakha, we know that the Ashkenazim have a prohibition to have many wives. And we have a problem, right? There's a cherem that of Rabbeinu Gershon that you're not supposed to have many wives. One of the big problems of having many wives is that suddenly you find yourself with children which are related without even knowing that they're related, and afterwards they intermarry, and afterwards there's situations which are beyond your control. Besides that, what is the obligation of a man to a wife?
To provide.
A man has to be able to provide, has to be able to satisfy the needs of his wife, has to be able to give comfort to his wife, has to be able to give her a roof over her head. He has to be able to nourish his wife, nurture his wife, heal her. It's so difficult to take care of one wife, to take care of two. No, really, speaking truthfully, right? A person that is, the problem is, why am I getting married? That's really the question. If I'm getting married because I want to fulfill some type of fantasies that I have and dreams and whatever I see on TV, then I understand why you will want many wives. The whole concept of marriage is that you want to be able to bring a union that's going to perfect both of you, and it's going to bring God into your union. Once you're not focused on one thing, it's impossible to be in two places at the same time. Today, we don't have the human or spiritual capacity. We're so engrossed in physicality that to have two wives would be it's a contradiction to the whole unity of the couple in this day and age. There are tzaddikim that did have multiple wives, and they were able to have multiple wives and give each one their attention. Today, to say that two wives will actually agree, it's like living in dreamland. What?
Maybe the world was designed for that.
The world was designed at a certain point for that, but there's certain things as we evolved in the
You have a
world.
shidduch crisis. There's too many girls out there, not enough guys. You're set two with one.
Yeah, and they're gonna be at each other's throats, right?
I was always like that.
What would happen
That's why
if
the law says you
one?
should have 3, not 2.
What?
The law says you should have 3, not 2.
Today, in this day and age, practically speaking, it becomes a problem at multiple levels, especially that the man himself, right? A man by nature, right, is going to look for certain things, and he's going to love one more than the other. And that itself is contrary to the whole concept of union in marriage. Can you sleep with a woman that has an IUD, or using birth control, or and so on and so forth? So, okay. So, first of all, the question
I'm pretty sure they're referring to like if they're married.
Let's take all the scenarios, at least a few of them. We'll avoid other scenarios. Are you allowed to have relations? Okay, we know that according to Jewish law, one is not allowed to spill seed in vain. So the question is, if you're having a relationship with a woman and she cannot give birth through this relationship, right? Are you allowed to have relations with such a woman? Isn't that just like spilling seed? So according to Jewish law, absolutely not. There's no problem whatsoever. If a woman is using birth control and you are married to her and she went to the mikveh and you're following the Jewish law, right? There are certain times that a woman is allowed to use contraceptives, right, with the permission of a rabbi for specific situations. And just like when a woman is pregnant, a man has an obligation to be able to satisfy the physical and emotional needs of his wife, and there's no problem whatsoever. But for sure, spilling seed is prohibited, and this has nothing to do with spilling seed, so it's not a problem. But definitely using anything type of contraceptive for the man himself is completely prohibited. Do you get punished for your bad thoughts? We have tens of thousands of thoughts daily. If we were to be punished for our thoughts, I think we would all be doomed. There's no question whatsoever. So, first of all, let me tell you a story. Rabbi Nachman of Breslev says, he asks a question. He says there's a man walking in the street, and there's a lamppost, and by accident he bumps into a lamppost, and he says, "I'm sorry, man." And then there's another man that's walking, and by accident he bumps into a woman, and he just continues. He thinks it's a lamppost. Who's worse?
The guy that bumped into the woman.
The lamppost.
The guy that bumped into the lamppost. What does he have in his head? He's thinking, oh, it's a woman. That's where his head is. Where the thought of a person is, that's where he stands. Now what happens is that when you have a bad thought coming to your head, imagine a river, and imagine a tree by the river during fall time where the leaves are falling. The moment the leaf falls, it goes, with the river, it goes away. Thoughts, as they come through your mind, we have a mitzvah, not to stray after our thoughts and after our eyes, which means sometimes in Miami, if you want to not run over somebody, you have to actually look at the road. But if you look at the road, you're bound to look at things that you're not supposed to. So thoughts will come to your mind. There's a difference between looking, staring. There's a difference between having a thought going through your mind and actually contemplating the thought. So no, you're not getting punished for the bad thoughts that you have. We are all human. Only tzaddikim of the highest possible levels don't have negative thoughts that come to their mind. We are normal people. We have what's called an animal soul, and we have a godly soul. And whenever the godly soul gets up, the animal soul gets up right away. That's why most of the negative thoughts a person has is during prayer. As soon as you get spiritually elevated, the other opponent in the ring says, hey, you're praying, I'm going to show you. And I go, oh, let's go to the marketplace. What are you doing after Shachit? You're going to the Rabbi Amar's class tonight? Oh, all these thoughts come through your mind. The moment you don't contemplate on the thoughts, you just continue focusing on what you need to focus, and you don't go to there willingly, there's absolutely no punishment whatsoever.
So you're saying not to focus on the thought too much.
Exactly, not to focus on the thought at all. Ignore the thought. Just let it go. Let it go.
Is there a punishment though? I thought it was just kapara, it's atonement.
A punishment for thoughts? No, there's no punishment for thoughts.
No, in general.
For what? For thoughts?
For anything. יש דבר כזה שקוראים לזה עונש ולא כפרה?
Hold on 1 second, that's another question. We're not there. No questions. We're right here. Yes, how about a pen and paper? If anybody wants to write questions, maybe you'll go around because we're going to be out of questions soon. People have all the answers to their life. Baruch Hashem. How does God know the future, but we have free will? The Rambam in Hilchot Yesodei Torah, in the laws of the foundations of the Torah, explains that there's things that we cannot understand when it comes to God. How it's possible at the same time that God knows, and at the same time we have freedom of choice. I'm going to give you an example. We know that a child, a baby, is in his mother's womb. When the child is in its mother's womb, it drinks and eats whatever the mother eats and drinks. Nevertheless, the womb is like seemingly a separate entity in which the child exists as a separate entity while he is completely dependent on the child. One of the realities that God created, just like God created time and space. Time and space are a creation. According to Hasidut and Kabbalah, we know that God is not bound by time. And therefore, God creates time. There's a dimension which is above time. There's a dimension which is completely above space, where space doesn't exist. The same thing, it's possible, the same way the Rambam says, the same way God gave certain rules to the world, that the world should be able to run in a certain way, the cells die and multiply themselves and reproduce themselves in the body in an exact way that God preset. At the same way, God gave the possibility to man to be able to have freedom of choice, and at the same time, God to know everything. At the same time. When you look in the Torah, it's very interesting. There's this concept that people look at the Torah codes, and they'll show you that the Rabbi got killed, and then we see what happened with the Holocaust, but it's always after the fact. Why is it always after the fact? Because if you go into the codes of the Torah, you have thousands of scenarios which are possible. But at the end of the day, out of these 1,000 scenarios, Hashem is going to decide, but God gives man the possibility to choose what he is going to do. It's not that God already preordained that it should be like this. You are able to break out of your of what the normal order of things is. I could walk right now, if I wanted to, I could walk right out of this room and say goodbye to everybody. But you all know I'm not doing this because I still have a few more questions which I want to answer. So, God, there's another concept in Hasidut and Kabbalah that are mentioned, where it says, כשם שיש כוח בבלי גבול, יש לו כוח, כשם שיש לו כוח בבלתי בעל גבול, יש לו כוח בגבול. The same way God has the power to be infinite, God has the power to be finite.
He could pick up the rock, but he can't.
Exactly. God is able to create a dual reality, and it's not a contradiction because that's the nature of God. I always say, at the time of the Greeks, they had different gods. They had the god of love, the god of this, the god of that. They created their gods. And like this, when the god got upset, the god of anger got upset, it's okay. If the gods are getting upset, I can get upset. And if the goddess can commit adultery, I can commit adultery. A God that you create is a God that you can understand. A God that you can understand is a God that you created yourself. Our God is above all understanding, just like the Jewish people, being 0.02% of the whole population of the world and still existing after all the oppression. That itself is part of the great enigma of how it's possible to be in the world, have a freedom of choice, and God knowing everything at the same time. Next question. Why do different groups of people follow different hechshers? A hechsher is a kosher certifications. So what happens is that there are different kosher certifications. So for example, you have people which are going to be in Jewish law itself. There is the baseline of Jewish law, right? Keeping Shabbat, keeping kosher. There's a baseline of what's called kosher, what's called this and what's called that when it comes to food. Now, there are levels which are much higher in stringency and how to be more stringent. According to the different groups and their observance, they basically created different bodies which supervise the food or slaughter the animal or kosherize it in a certain way in order to make it that there shouldn't be a doubt that there will ever be a problem. And that's why you have different groups which have different hechshers, not for any other reason. Next question. When can we expect Mashiach?
Now.
Beautiful. I love it. We can expect Mashiach any moment now. And the truth of the matter is, we know that we're just standing before Purim, and one of the three things that will happen when Mashiach comes is the mitzvah of Mechiyat Amalek, to erase the name of Amalek. Today, the Rambam explains that since Sancheriv mixed up all the nations, we do not know who Amalek is. And therefore, whoever behaves himself in a way that he is like Amalek, and this is what Hamas is doing, you know that they are the Amalek of that generation. And there's a mitzvah, Timchet Zecher Amalek, to erase the name of Amalek. And that's a part of bringing Mashiach. It's the first time in the history that we see that the Israeli government, for the first time, they're going to a war. They don't care about anybody's opinion. They're going all the way, and we will not finish this war till we completely eradicate Hamas. Just that in itself, whether you are a believer in an obvious way, or whether you're a hidden believer, whether you are observant or non-observant, practicing or not, that in itself should make a tilt in your mind and say, 1 second, if this is happening, and we are at 0.02% of the world, and the whole world, 8 billion people, I don't know how many we are today, I stopped counting a long time ago, and you look that every eye is on us, and the lie of the UNRWA and the UN and all these liars from all the governments and everything, which are lying in the face of everybody, and you see that the lies are coming out, and the Jewish people are standing strong, and we're going in full force, that tells you that the world is really asaf any moment now. And therefore, the Rambam says, Maimonides says in the Laws of Tshuva, that a person should see the world in a perfect balance between good and bad. And your action can actually make a difference. Not like some people I hear sometimes, oh, what does God care about me? That's nonsense. One person can make a tremendous difference in the whole world. We've had so many of these one people that had a tremendous impact on the whole world. You can have that impact on the world. And it's our responsibility to be part of this. And that's why one of the names for Mashiach is Shiloh. Shiloh is Shiloh, a present for him. Meaning that when Mashiach comes, we will come with our mitzvot, with our efforts, with our self-sacrifice, and we'll say, this is what I did, this is how I got out of my comfort zone in order to make you come faster. So yes, we are the generation. We are the ones that live it. Why do I have to eat kosher dairy?
It's a good question.
So, I don't know if the question is, why do I have to eat Chalav Yisrael? Why do I have to eat kosher dairy? So you have to know that according to Kabbalah, when you eat milk that's not supervised by a Jew, it's metamtem et hamoach ve'et halev. It makes the heart and the mind of a person closed to matters which are more spiritual. And therefore, the more observant you are on what you bring into your mouth, it transforms the matter of your physical body, right? Food is the only thing that actually becomes your flesh and blood. And therefore, when a person decides to start eating more kosher and being more observant, even in the kosher things, because there are milks and cheeses which don't come from kosher animals, and it's like eating from a non-kosher animal, just the same way. And it has an effect on your brain. I'll tell you a story. I have a good friend of mine, which was a rabbi in Berkeley, in California. And there was this man, a very successful, wealthy individual, that the only rabbi he knew was that Chabad rabbi. And he did the following. He said, Rabbi, you're the only rabbi I know. You're marrying off my daughter. You're doing the wedding. He said, I'm sorry, Joe. The only way I'm doing your wedding is if it's kosher. I cannot do a wedding that's not kosher. He said, okay, Rabbi, you got it. And this guy prides himself that he has so much money. He doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe in nothing. Okay. Next thing you know, they have the Thursday wedding. Friday, they organize a Friday night dinner. Shabbat day, they had a big celebration. Shabbat day, the father of the bride gets up. He says, L'chaim, L'chaim, everyone. I want to thank God, the master of the universe. The rabbi, my friend, looks at him and says, he fell from the moon. I know this guy for 15 years. He says he doesn't believe in God. What happened that suddenly he's screaming out, God, God, God? And then he realized in 3 days, the guy only put kosher food in his mouth. When you fill your head and your mouth with shtuyot, with nonsense, it doesn't give much place for holiness to penetrate and to really have an effect. It doesn't mean you shouldn't continue studying and doing the right thing. Right? What is your advice for someone who does not come from a lot of support? I don't understand the question, but I'm going to answer it. There is a concept in science, in agriculture, which is called dry farming. I'm not talking about growing pot and wheat. Dry farming, even though it's legal in most places, I know in Toronto it's legal, so when you fly to Toronto you get 2 flights for the price of 1. I personally do pot, LSD, and CBD every day. And
LSD?
POT is put on tefillin. LSD is let's start davening. And CBD is Chabad. That's how people say, hi Rabbi. How do they know I'm high on life? I don't know. Anyways, On a lower note, there's a concept which is called dry farming. What is dry farming? Dry farming is very interesting. I speak about it in my book, To Be What To Become, available on Amazon. And dry farming is basically you take a tree and you make the tree grow and you give it water until it grows, it really has some good roots and it starts growing properly, and then you starve it. You don't give it any more water. The tree is now in a dilemma. The tree can either give up on itself, die, or look for water. So the tree starts pushing with its roots and in search of water. But something happens. In the process of looking for water, there's a lower level of the earth which is really stone. And it's very difficult to break. So now the tree has to grow these enormous, very strong roots which are going to break through stone. But once they break stone, at that moment, they're able to hit a point of water and they're completely independent of the world. Sometimes in life, we don't have the support from outside. When we don't have the support of outside, it's time to fight it out and to make an effort. I know that this generation is very entitled, and a lot of people, even those who have support, they really don't have support. All they have is crutches. And therefore, when they need to stand on their own 2 feet, they don't know how to do it. So when you have a challenge and you say, I don't have support, what you're saying is, I need to dig into the support that's inside of me, and that's going to bring me my true liberation and my true strength. Where does Judaism stand in regards to people with psychological disorders? Where does Judaism stand with people which have issues with Crohn's disease, stomach issues, and skin disease, and any type, the same way that a person needs to take care of their physical body, the different mental challenges, and especially the mental challenges of this generation, are unfortunately more current than before. But the Torah says to treat it exactly the same way. And there's no shame today to get a coach, to get a doctor, to see a psychiatrist, to take medicine, for whatever you need to take, and do what you need to do in order to be able to be healthy mentally and grow mentally in a proper way. I want to say that certainly what we do to our brains when we fill it with the hours and hours. I'll tell you a story. A young lady, 16 years old, came to me with her parents. They were about to throw her out of a school. I looked at the young lady, I said to her, how much time do you spend on your cell phone? She's Shomer Shabbat. How much time do you spend on your cell phone when you come back from school? An hour? She says to me, more. 2 hours? More. 4 hours? More. 5 hours? More. 6 hours? Yeah, 6 hours. So I said, it's extraordinary. Let me ask you, what would you like to do? What's your ambition in the future? What would you like to become? But she tells me what she wants to become. So you're spending 36 hours, that's a day and a half, there's 24 hours in a day, right? That's a day and a half of watching the most ridiculous, stupid, rubbish online. Imagine if you spent 36 hours learning about what your ambition is. In no time, you will become the top world expert in that field. If you ask me, that's a bigger problem than this is causing a lot of the disorders we have in our head. People, unfortunately, some people have a problem in the chemical balance. Some people have, I've dealt a lot with different mental disorders as well as addictions and so on and so forth. And I can tell you, if you're healthy and you're feeding your mind all day long with this, you're actually causing yourself some type of mental disorder. There was a concert, I think it was Hanukkah, and it was in the Hard Rock Cafe. I was never in the Hard Rock before. In order to be able to go to the Hard Rock, you have to go through the casino. It was my first time being in a casino. So I walked, being careful. Being careful that not to look right and left. But there's something I had no choice but to see. It was the slot machines. Now the way I know slot machines, right, is something like this. But here it looked like completely different. It was basically one big cell phone, right? A human cell phone, size so big. And people just doing this. It reminded me a lot of what people do on Instagram all day, right? And it's built exactly in that same way in order to create an addiction and to create a dependence on the mind. All right? These are psychological disorders that we can avoid. So when a person, Baruch Hashem, is healthy in his mind and doesn't have to take medicine, don't put yourself in such a situation. The Rambam said that the way to find God is by looking at nature, and every breath, every creature has a creator. But if you ask, who created God? The Rambam says your brain can't understand. So why bother trying to make sense to this? Okay. There's a pasuk what the Rambam brings down. First of all, let's talk about the first halakha of the Rambam. The first halakha of the Rambam is Yesod HaYesodot ve'Amud HaChochmot, the foundation of all foundations and the pillar of all pillars. Yedah sheyesh sham atzud rishon, to know that there's a first existence. Ve'u mamtzi kol nimtza, and he brings into existence every existence. Ve'chol hanimtzaim v'shamayim v'aretz u'ma shebenehem, and all creations from heaven to earth and whatever is between them, lo nimtzeu, only exist by the truth of his existence, be'amitat himatzu. That's the first halakha of the Rambam. Mitzvah zod, this is a mitzvah, lada'at, to know God. We're not asked to understand God. We are asked to know God. What does it mean to know God? There is emunah, faith. Great philosopher by the name of Lavoisier in the 1700s said, where understanding stops, this is where faith begins. The Gemara says, Ganva pumar tartar rahmana karya, a thief, before he goes to steal, to rob, he says, Hashem, help me. Just like that guy in the nightclubs. Hashem, help me, this girl. Right? But he knows that it's wrong. So how? This is dichotomy. On one hand, you believe in God. On the other hand, you're doing the opposite. Yes, because you didn't bring that belief into knowledge. In order to bring belief into knowledge, you have to contemplate on the greatness of God. But how can you know the greatness of God? Through looking at the creation, you will know and understand that it's impossible that a human or a computer or any system created this. It must be something which is beyond. And that will inspire you to get out of your human limited intellectual capacity to understand something which is a little higher. So what was yesterday faith now becomes knowledge, And slowly but surely you start to cleave to God. That is the mitzvah. And once you do that, the Rambam says at the end of the last halacha of Hilchot Tshuva, concerning the mitzvah of loving God. How could you be commanded to love God? To love, right? To have a feeling. What does it mean you have a feeling? How could God command you to have a feeling? Says the Rambam, "Ve'avta et Hashem Elokecha, eno ohev ela b'da'at sheyad'eu." A person can only love according to the knowledge he has. Im me'at me'at v'im harbe harbe. The more knowledge you have of God, the more you will love God. Lachen, says the Rambam, the last halacha, halacha vav, in Hilchot Tshuva. Lachen, hayav adam liyached et atzmo, lilmod, chokhmot המודיעים לו את בוראו כפי שהדברנו בהלכות יסודי התורה. A person, in order to know God, he has to, in order to love God, he has to know God. In order to know God, he has to study about God. And that's why the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, etc., revealed Chassidut, and the Arizal revealed the secrets of Torah in order that we should be able to grasp more of God and be more ready for Mashiach, which is the next question this person asked, which is how come it doesn't say openly about Mashiach and about Olam Haba and all these things, because there's a lot of things that are not said openly in the Torah. When it says in the Torah, "Taftam al mezuzot betecha u'misharecha," it will be written on the doorposts. Do we know what's written? What you're supposed to write? Where you're supposed to put it? That is supposed to be parchment. All these things are part of the oral law. So that is not very surprising that things are not explicit. What should do to be more positive in a family if a family member is is extremely sick? It's a very, very, very big challenge. On one hand, we want to be positive, right? When we see weeds growing in our backyard, we say, "Oh, it's positive. It's good." No, it's bad. We have to do something. You stay positive. There's a concept that machshava mo'elet. There's an expression of the Tzemach Tzedek that says in Yiddish, "Tracht gut, sie wird sein gut." Think good, and it's going to be good. The positive thought is not necessarily because things are positive. Things are not positive, but the fact that I'm going to have a positive thought, that can affect someone else. That can have an effect that it's going to be better for the other person. Just like prayer. It's a proven thing that doctors that operated in the operation room, they seen how they have more success when people pray for the patient. So to stay positive, there are moments where you just want to break down. But at the same time, continue having faith and trusting in Hashem. That is a tremendous, tremendous test and a tremendous challenge, but we do our best. If I believe in astrology and want to go more in depth about it, learn more about it, to what extent am I allowed? Since I know that we are above the mazal, I always wanted to get a palm reading, but I know that's not allowed either. I'm going to tell you what the problem is with palm reading, astrology, and all these things. Yes, we are above the mazal. The problem is, when I ask somebody that knows how to read my palm, in the Zohar HaKadosh, in Parashat Yitro, in the parasha that explains V'ata Techezeh, and in the Tikkunei Zohar, Tikkun Samechet 69, over there extensively, it develops the subject not only of the palm reading, but of the readings of the different lines on the face, and so on and so forth. So there are those for which could study this, and it's mathematics. You know, I just examine, you have, yeah, right, if your nose is, you're Jewish. then there's an inspiration which is higher than that. The problem is when you go to somebody and they read your palm or they read your face, you are basically saying, I am taking my whole mazal and I'm limiting it to your limited human understanding. That's the problem with astrology and everything else. The moment that you put your faith and trust in Hashem, at that moment, it doesn't matter which mazal you have. Now, of course, let's not fool ourselves. There are things which a person is predisposed by his birth date, and there's certain human cycles of energy, and that's why when they take astronauts, and before sending them to outside, in a ship, on a rocket, outside space, right? It's only at certain times, according to their cycle of energy of the body. We have different cycles of body. Energy according to when we're born, and these are all true things. But at the same time, they're limiting things. There's something that limits us. And we are not allowed. Tamim tiyem Hashem Elokecha, the Pasuk says, you have to be tamim, you have to be completely sincere and true and belief, with simple belief, Hashem. Not to try to look for things, because at the end of the day, you will never be satisfied with them. Right? So, we have some more questions here. 1 second. 73 pages. Okay. So, the class was supposed to last for 10 minutes. No, I'm just joking. Let's be serious here. Oh, that's why. It's a booklet. So nice. So I can actually choose a question. Are you happy? That's my favorite question. Thank you for asking me. Am I happy? One day, Rabbi Chay Amar was asked, when was the happiest moment in your life? And she said, right now. What do you mean, right now? Says, if it was in the past, then today I'm not happy. And it's in the future, then I don't know what the future is going to bring. A person has to live in the moment. The present, just like in English, a present is a present. There's no greater present. Infinity is living in the now. At this right moment, it doesn't matter what happened the second before. I could have done the worst sin. But right now, at this moment, my future is in my hands right now. As we said before, we have freedom of choice. And therefore, I need to be happy with the opportunities that are presented to me right now. When a person lives his life in that way, everything can be transformed. But it starts with living in the moment and yes, being happy. Yes, I'm happy. Of course, I have moments of difficulty like everybody else, but I try to be as happy. And I want to tell you, one day, it was in Poland and in Russia, and they were in a cattle train, about 100 people. And there were only 2 Jews, a young man and an older man. Of course, you can imagine a freezing Russian, Siberian cold for 12 hours being in that cattle train, how difficult it was. They didn't eat for a few days. And here, the older man says to the young man, I don't feel my ears, rub my ears. He starts rubbing the ears. I don't feel my nose, rub my nose. I don't feel my fingers, rub my fingers. And like this for 12 hours, this guy giving him a massage here, a massage over there. The kid was exasperated. What did he do? As soon as they got to the final destination, everybody on that cattle train, at the exception of the older man and himself, were dead. They all froze of death. Froze to death. The first thing the younger man does, he takes these people to the doctor. This person to the doctor, I'm sorry. I said to the doctor, I just saved this man's life. I was warming him up the whole way. Doctor said, you didn't save his life. You saved your life. If you would not have been warming him up, you would have froze to death as well. And the times we're living right now, where people are so depressed, and their head is in the news and all the negativity of the world, today, the only way to stay happy is to make somebody else happy. So if you want to be happy all the days of your life, smile at somebody. Make another person happy. Why did I answer your phone call? Because I knew it was you. Or I didn't know it was you. I don't know who it was. Is there a way to conceive a girl or a boy? And why? I'm going to skip that question because it's PG-13. Should observant and non-observant Jews date? But for the previous question, once you are about to get married, we could give you some advice. And, contact our office. So that's a great question. When we say an observant Jew and a Jew that's not observant, should they date? It's already so difficult. What?
Is there potential in a house?
Okay, so that's a great question. It's a great question. It's a very relevant question. First of all, let's look at marriage in itself. That should be a class in itself. Marriage. It's a life story. It's already difficult enough to be a man and to be a woman and to share everything together and understand one another. There's the difference of gender. Yes, there is a difference between the two genders. That's number one. Number two, and in the way they operate. Number three, there's a difference in the whole baggage and experiences that we all have. So to mix that on top of everything in a belief system, if I believe something, I believe that it's important to keep Shabbat, and you don't believe that it's important to keep Shabbat, so what's going to be with the children? At the end of the day, you want to build a home. Now what will happen if you're already married and one person becomes observant? God forbid they shouldn't divorce. It's possible to build the marriage together. But to put yourself already in a situation where the other party is not ready to move or budge, it's not going to work. In most instances, I can tell you right now, it's not going to work. If you have a possibility and you are growing together, and you are looking to grow, then yes, it could work. Even though I'm observant and she's not observant, or she's observant, and in general, the woman will transform the man more than the man will transform the woman. How do I know who is my soulmate? We'll have a class just on soulmates, relationships, marriage, shalom bayit. I'm going to give you the secret of shalom bayit in 2 words. If you want shalom, buy it. It's very simple. So, okay, 1 second, we have some more questions here. In the Jewish religion, we don't believe in reincarnation, but it also states that God doesn't make new souls. Who says we don't believe in reincarnation? There's a whole book of the Arizal which is called Sha'ar HaGilgulim. And over there he explains who is the reincarnation of who, and who Moshe Rabbeinu was the reincarnation of Noah. Of Hevel, I'm sorry. And who was the reincarnation of Yitro, was the incarnation of somebody else, and so on. Of course we believe in
Does he
reincarnation.
bring sources or just?
It's all from Kabbalah.
And honestly, also, like, I thought
What?
it was Rabbi
So we just
Chay
believe
Amar.
him.
We just believe Kabbalah,
No, we just believe the Arizal.
and if we believe the Zohar Kadosh, it's okay, we can believe the Zohar
No,
Kadosh.
the Zohar goes through the Sukkim, he proves it.
Okay, and let's say we don't have Sukkim. Are we going to believe the Arizal or not?
Would you? I'm asking.
I mean, the whole Kabbalah has been expounded, and we understand, everything we understand in Kabbalah comes from the Ari HaKadosh. So basically, it would be basically taking all of the Sephardic tradition in their essence and saying that it's wrong if we're not going to believe in what the Arizal says. The Arizal says there's Gilgulim, there's no question about it. Besides that, it's not even the Arizal. Rabbi Yonatan ben Uziel in Parashat Mishpatim, it says Ve'ele HaMishpatim asher tasim lifnehem. Rabbi Yonatan ben Uziel in his Targum, in his translation, he says this is the adventure of Gilgulim, of the reincarnation. So it's already done. There's even a source before that. Okay, is there punishment or is it kapara? That's a great question. When in Masechet Sanhedrin, in the Talmud of Sanhedrin, when a person is punishable by death, he is supposed to say, Ye mitati zo kapara. So the punishment is a kapara. You see there,
Could you explain Kabbalah?
a kapara is an atonement, which means that there are certain things that happen to us, right, that are suffering, that happens to us, which is a kapara over the person. So yes, it sometimes a punishment can be definitely a kapara. There's no question. 1 second. Let's see if we have any more questions. I can't believe we're done with the question. 1 second. And I think I have a question in my phone. Why am I not home? No, I'll answer that question when I come home, okay? That was my wife. No, I'm just joking.
Did anyone not hear their question? There you go.
We didn't hear the question. So somebody sent me a message, and I can just see when it was, and I'll be able to answer the question as well. Okay. Now, what would be the typical thing that would happen right now? I would see the 17 messages which came in during this call. I would just get distracted, start answering them, and forget I'm in front of a crowd. All right? What happens is, 1 second, here we go. Oh, here. Hello, Rabbi. My question is, if somebody does not keep Shabbat or kosher, but starts dating someone who does, and they now are also doing it, is that okay? Absolutely, fantastic. So you're growing together, it's not a problem. And what if it doesn't work out and they stop keeping Shabbat and kosher, kind of like you change what you do depending on who you're dating? What do you think about this? Well, I want to say that in general, people that, I was always wondering, there's people I meet that have never got, they never got married. I could tell you a story. This guy, Richard, he was 45 at the time, and we opened the Enswet about 20 years ago, 40 at the time. And he never got married, and we're opening the Ark, and the customary in the synagogue in our shul to make a Mishe Berach, to make a special prayer for all those who are not yet well. Richard comes up to me and says, Rabbi, can you make a bracha, a blessing for my fiancée? I said, Richard, I know you for 10 years. You never told me you had a fiancée. He says, yeah, I didn't meet her, so maybe she's sick, so make a blessing. It's a true story. So, why so many people not married? The short answer for this is that in general, people don't know who they are, how much more so do they not know who they're looking for? When I'm a chameleon, I meet with this girl. Oh, she's nice. What are you? You sure Shabbat? No, I'm not. Oh, me neither. I'm just like, you know. Oh, and where are you? I'm sure Shabbat. Oh, so am I. I'm really becoming more observant, you know. Trying to get the bait. What are you looking for in a marriage? But that's another discussion. So B'ezrat Hashem, maybe that will be the topic for next time. A little word on Purim, because Purim is coming up. Purim is an extraordinary time. Our sages teach us that Purim, the word Kippurim, Yom Kippurim, the day of Yom Kippur, is like Purim. Whatever on Kippur we accomplish through inflicting ourselves by not eating and by praying 5 prayers and so on and so forth, during Purim, with the joy of Purim, of doing the 4 mitzvot of Purim, which is listening to the Megillah Saturday night, Motzei Shabbat, and Sunday, doing a festive meal on Sunday, giving mishluach manot, ish lere'eu, at least 2 types of foods, one to another, and matanot la'evyanim, finding 2 poor people and rejoicing them. Through this, we have the power to be able to do a teshuvah, a return to God through joy, which is even higher than the return. We return to Hashem through prayers and fear and so on and so forth during Yom Kippur. Now, what happens on the day of Purim? Why is Purim so special? It says in the Megillah, "V'kivel haYehudim asher echelu la'asot." I'm going to give you a little history. We got the Torah in the year 2448. After 450 years, the temple was built, first temple. After 410 years, it was destroyed. We went into exile. We found ourselves in Persia. That's 850 some years after the giving of the Torah. It's going to be the first time that we suffered anti-Semitism since the creation of the world, since the giving of the Torah. The Jewish people were going to be annihilated, completely destroyed by the Hitler of the time, Haman. We stood steadfast for a full year, did not give up on our identity. We didn't think of converting. We were ready to give our lives for our Judaism. God said that at Matan Torah, when God gave us the Torah at Mount Sinai, it was great. God gave us the Torah. But when did we actually receive the Torah? It was at Purim. Purim is a time that the Jew stood strong with his identity and was able to stand up. And that's why throughout the whole Megillat Esther, we are referred to as Yehudi. What's a Yehudi? Kol hakofer b'avodah zarah nikra Yehudi. Whoever says, I don't belong to all these other idol worships or the other services, I have one God, is called a Yehudi. He is called a Jew. Yehudi means somebody that surrenders to God. Yehudi means that you stand in a different level altogether. This is the moment of the highest level of Jewish pride, is Purim. This is the moment where we connect ourselves to God and connect ourselves to our identity. And therefore, it's the highest thing that could ever be. So B'ezrat Hashem, I really hope that everybody will celebrate Purim. And this Purim, I invite you, we're going to have a public hanging of Nasrallah, of Sinwar, of Ismail Haniyeh, and all the friends of Hamas. And just like Haman and his 10 children were hung on Purim, we will be celebrating a public hanging. And B'ezrat Hashem, don't hang on, they will for you. We will celebrate together, and through us, each one of us here, taking a mitzvah upon ourselves, of growing. According to my calculations, if everybody here, next time we have a class together, brings a friend, we will be exactly double the amount we are tonight. So, let's do it. God bless you.
You show up.